What's going on, everybody? My name is Todd from Toddtronics, and this is my very first ever long form video on the Retro Handhelds page. If you recognize the sound of my voice, I have been making some shorts on the channel for a few weeks now. However, I have a product here that is super hot off the press. I believe we're actually the first ones to receive this, and it's made by ANBERNIC, but it's not a handheld. However, it is something that you hold in your hand. So this is their new RG P01 controller. It's supposed to have a lot of really interesting features, and so we're going to take a look at that together today and kind of just get a first look at it. All right, before we dive into the box and start unboxing the whole thing, I just want to make it clear I have not unboxed this or used this at all yet. I did just take a look to see which color they sent me, and they did send me the white one, which is exciting because I think that's what they were using in a lot of their promo footage. But just looking around the sides of the box, they are advertising turbo and macro functions, 6-axis gyroscope, so motion controls. We'll definitely test that out. We have quick software interchanges, which I think is going to allow you to basically go between like your standard Nintendo mode to your X input mode. And then over here we have the Bluetooth, the 2.4 gigahertz, which is going to have a dongle in there to allow you to do that, and a wired connection, RGB joysticks, and Hall effect sensing joysticks and triggers. And I already know that there's somebody typing in the comments, does it have cardinal snapping on the joysticks? Because I know I'm kind of wondering that too, but honestly, I'm not that worried about it. But let's get into the controller unboxing and see what we have in store. All right, so it seems ANBERNIC does not really stray even when making new products from making new box designs, but that's okay. This is a good enough thing here. We have the dongle for the 2.4 gigahertz. I'm really excited for this because I'm hoping that this will have less latency, which will be really helpful. I've been playing a lot of fighting games, and the less latency, the better. It does look like it's just generic, no ANBERNIC branding or anything like that on there, which, I mean, really, why would you take the time to spend the money to put your brand on here? I mean, if one day this ends up being at the bottom of a drawer, hopefully I remember that it goes to this controller, but I mean, that'll do. And this is supposed to have Bluetooth 5.3, which is supposed to be really good. I'm not sure if my PC is compatible with 5.3. Just kind of want to get that little disclaimer out there, but wow. All right, right off the bat, I can tell you, even though we've seen this in preview videos, in person, it looks a lot like another controller that we've all seen. And it does tend to feel like that controller as well. I'm not going to lie. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, they took a lot of inspiration, as you can see, from the Pro Controller. However, Nintendo Pro Controllers do not have analog triggers, so this is a step up from that. And it does seem to be a little less rounded in the front of the controller, which, I mean, for better or for worse, you don't really put any part of your fingers or anything on that part of the controller, so I don't think that's really going to come into effect. D-pad feels good. Let me put that up to the mic so you can hear it. A little loud, actually very loud. But I think if you're just pushing regular directional buttons, you're not going to hear it. But say you're playing Street Fighter or something, yeah, it's quite noisy. The tension on the thumbsticks is interesting because it feels, honestly, it feels kind of really light. Like you really do not have to give it any sort of oomph to get these analog sticks moving. And the triggers are kind of the same thing. They're very, very easy to press in. In the hand, it feels really nice. It has a decent amount of heft to it. It's not overly heavy, but it doesn't feel cheapy or anything like that. We have that nice grip texture that we've recently seen on things like the new Xbox Series controller, and the new DualSense kind of has something similar. I will say it's a little stronger than both of them, but not in a bad way. I tend to like a nice kind of like grit to the plastic on my controllers. I find it to feel good. These macro buttons, they feel really nice. They don't feel like you would accidentally push them or anything like that without meaning to, which is exciting, but they're also not that hard to push in. I love my Steam Deck, and I remember having the LCD. It felt like it was a lot harder to push in the macro buttons, so I never used them. And then when I finally upgraded to the OLED, I noticed they were a little softer, and I like that a lot more. And so ever since then, I am really big into programming macros into games. So that's pretty exciting as well. All right, so before we move on, there are like 3 minor gripes that I have with this controller without even plugging it in and using it. Some of them are probably just me being picky and annoying, and then some of them might actually be something that most people would agree with me on. The first is that these analog sticks, they feel good, but they're extremely smooth. There's no sort of grip or anything to them. And I can only imagine once you get your own finger greases and oils and God knows what on these things, it's only going to be a worse situation. It's usable, 100% it's usable, but I haven't seen a controller with smooth analog sticks like this in such a long time. I guess you could fix that with maybe like an analog stick topper or something. Maybe some stubs nubs or something. Not sure. Does kind of bother me, but I'm gonna probably get over it within using the controller for a little bit. Now, the next thing that I noticed, I actually didn't show the cable when I unboxed it because I kind of forgot that a lot of people will use the controller in that way. The good thing is you could use your own USB-C cable, but this is the cable that comes out of the box, and it's not long. I mean, I can't really show you on the desk, but you've got maybe 3 feet here. It's not braided or anything like that. You could get your own cable, like I said, but you really shouldn't have to. And then I already pointed this one out earlier. I would really appreciate just some sort of ANBERNIC logo or something to let me know that this dongle belongs to this controller. Because I feel like without that, any gamer has a million USB sticks and things kind of floating around, and I just think it's a small oversight. But I mean, I won't let that spoil me from liking the controller, so we'll give it a fair chance. All right, so we have it paired up in Windows. It's going to show up in your Bluetooth under Pro Controller. Already kind of a little suspect, but we're kind of just going to ignore that little fact. Now we have the RGBs kind of doing their own little thing. They look a little different than the one on their handhelds. The color palette's a little different. It's not quite as bright. I think the diffuser's just maybe a tad more thick or something, but I mean, who buys a controller for the RGB? Am I right? But let's see if we can kind of pull up the old instruction manual. I guess I got to read some instructions today, and we'll see how we can change the RGB. All right, so looking at the instructions here, I already made a whoopsie. I'm going to leave that in just because I want to be honest with you guys. It's my first video. So in the pairing instructions, much like any of the other multi-controllers that will allow you to pair to multiple different systems, you hold down the pair button, which is that top button I showed you, and then different other face buttons for the different other things that you could use this for. So holding it down and pairing it for 2 seconds, it's paired in Pro Controller mode. That's why it showed up as a Pro Controller in Windows. But if you want to use X input, you can hold the X button while holding the pair button, and then it'll say that LED number 2, so this one here, will be on when you're in X input mode, and then A for Android, and then B for iOS. So actually, that's pretty intuitive. I like that. All right, after a brief trip to the instruction manual, we learned a few things. So this little circle icon here is being called the cap key. It's the one to the left of the home key that you'll probably recognize from another controller. If you hold the R3 down and then click it in and tap the cap key, that's going to be cycling through your options. So that's pretty cool. Not too hard to remember, so I like that. All right, and also, as you can see, I have the second LED lit up, which means I went through and put this in X input mode. So it's still paired to a PC. It actually shows up in your Bluetooth under Xbox wireless controller. Go figure. But yeah, so if you have your LED number 2 solid on when you're paired, just know that it's going to be probably your Xbox layout. So your ABXY, which is what's printed on here. So it shouldn't be that hard to tell. I just figured since we're on a PC, most games are probably going to want to use X input, so I went ahead and did that. But let's stop talking about how to use the controller, because if you buy this thing, you're going to get an instruction manual anyway. So let's just play some games and see how it feels. All right, getting into our first game here, I wanted to pick something that I've been playing a lot recently because it's fresh in my mind. I know how it should control, and I'm sure a lot of you are playing this too, and a lot of people are looking to pick up good controllers specifically for this game right now, and that's Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Great game. This isn't a review on that game, but it is a review on how this game plays on this controller. First of all, I don't see any cardinal snapping, and it feels like the dead zones are really good on this. This isn't a game that has super precise analog movement. It's actually kind of notchy by default, so we'll check back in with that with another game. However, the dead zones are set very low, which is good. you can still kind of go smooth and slow, or if you want to speed up, it does feel like the transition is really good. Now, getting into the face buttons, I'm really excited that this has flat face buttons. The only controller I own that has flat face buttons is my Nintendo Switch Pro controller, and that's the one thing I absolutely love about that controller. Having the flat face buttons when you're mashing buttons all the time feel really nice. Having that dome shape, it gets tiresome when you have to hold down a button for a long time, and if you're hitting it repetitively over and over again, kind of feels like it's notching into your skin. And the flat face buttons do feel good here. Noise-wise, I'm used to using a GameSir Cyclone Pro, which, if you've ever used that controller, kind of has like mouse clicks for the actual button presses. I'm used to a controller with a bit of noise, and I wouldn't say that this is quite as loud as that, but it is a little bit louder than your standard DualSense or your standard Xbox Series controller. But again, not obnoxiously loud. Here I am. I'm literally playing a game that's designed for you to mash buttons and inputs, so keep that in mind. And we'll kind of just get into another game, maybe with some different gameplay styles to kind of see how these analog sticks really do. This was more just to test the buttons, and so far it's living up to expectations. No discernible crazy input lag or anything like that, or latency. And it seems like, as far as like the triggers and everything go, everything seems pretty par the course for a normal controller, so that's good. For this next game that we're going to be testing, I picked Session Skateboarding. This is a skateboarding simulator game that heavily relies on precise inputs of both analog sticks in order to pull off different skateboarding tricks, as well as using the triggers to control your turning as well as body movements. I have a few hundred hours into this game, and I have played a lot of it to be able to tell if something were to feel off. It would be pretty obvious to me. So far, definitely no signs of any sort of cardinal snapping. The dead zones on the triggers feel really, really good. If anything, it takes a little less to get the precise movement that you would normally need on another controller, which is a plus. And I'm not finding the slick top of the actual analog sticks to be a problem here. So I would say that this game gets a pass with this controller. It feels really good. Again, no discernible latency or anything. Those face buttons feel good. Everything plays exactly how I remember it to, so pretty neat. All right, for our next game test here, I decided that I was going to fire up Stardew Valley. I wanted to test the D-pad as well as maybe binding some macros to this controller to see what that experience is like. I know the cool hip thing to do is to use Contra to test for false diagonals and stuff, but one thing you'll learn about me here on this channel is I like to just do things a little different. So pushing down, it's very obvious that it's not going to pass a Contra test. Unfortunately, it just seems like it's too easy to get those false diagonals. However, where there's a negative, there's always a positive, and I think that this would be a good D-pad for fighting games. I didn't have any loaded up at this moment, so we'll definitely have to revisit that later, but I can tell you that it does feel good. However, getting those false diagonals, as you can see here, I'm not really having to rock super hard or anything like that in order for those to happen. But let's try binding a macro and see how difficult that could be. According to the instructions here, you need to press M or M2, which is going to be your two macros on the back, one or the other, select, and then that's supposed to start the search for the button that you're trying to do. So let's do M1, select. Okay, so we're flashing here. Something's happening. I'm going to hit B, and then M1 again. So, yep, it's that simple. And then I wonder if we hold select and M1 again and then end it without selecting anything. Yep, that turns it off. So that's pretty intuitive and easy to do. I think the way it's explained in the instructions is a little confusing, but I mean, not too hard to figure out. So that's cool. So there you have it, ANBERNIC's first controller. I think, honestly, my final thoughts on this controller after just using it for maybe a couple hours or so is that it feels like a really good controller. I like that it has a lot of versatility. You're going to be able to use this thing on your Switch, your Xbox, an Android phone, iOS. You could probably use it just fine with anything. I haven't tried pairing it to like a Steam Deck or anything, but because it has X input and because it has that 2.4 gigahertz dongle, you could pretty much use it on anything. And the Bluetooth works amazing. I didn't notice any sort of latency or anything like that. The wired connection is obviously going to be amazing. I didn't love the USB-C cable that they included in the box, but the good thing is you can use your own cable. I'm sure just anything will work just fine. It doesn't look like they have any crazy lockouts or anything that's going to prevent you from using whatever cable that you like. So you could pick yourself up a nice little braided cable or something if that's your thing. All the features worked easy. It was easy to follow the manual and do things like change the vibration or change the RGB on the sticks, even programming macros. Super intuitive. My only negative takeaway on this controller is that we don't know anything about price, and that the thumbsticks are a little slick, so I'm kind of worried about what that'll be like down the road, but only time can tell. And again, that's something you could fix with like a thumbstick cap or something like that down the road. The build quality of the controller feels really nice. And as I was wrapping this video up, I was kind of laughing to myself because I was thinking of how this is 3 big firsts in this video. It's my first video in long form with retro handhelds with you, so thank you if you made it to the end of this video. It's the first time ANBERNIC has made a controller, at least to my knowledge. Maybe comment down below if I'm wrong. And it's the first time we've ever reviewed an ANBERNIC product showing gameplay, and none of it was emulation. I know, imagine that. They're really branching out. But yeah, if you like this video, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure if you're not subscribed, you should double check right now. Hit the subscribe button down below. Read the description for upcoming links and pricing and things like that. Chat with me in the Discord. Tell me you hate my face. Tell me you hate my voice. Tell me you love the video. I don't know. I don't care. I'll read through anything, but I appreciate you guys watching this. I hope everybody has a fantastic day.